part of the reason that's so funny is because there's some of that that's true, isn't it? There's some of that, and let me ask this question. How many of you would say that at some point in your life you said something that you regret saying? Is there anybody? Okay, if there's any hands down, you're lying right now. Because I think all of us have found ourselves in that place. And the words of our mouths are so important. And this morning, that's what we're going to take a look at as we continue in this Covered in Dust series. This morning, I have taken on the persona of Indiana Jones in the classroom. And I thought a sweater vest, that looks like a college professor, doesn't it? But we're going to walk through some different words that have to do with the words out of our mouths and some of the teachings, some Jewish teachings on that this morning. Well, a situation happened, this was a few years ago, in a Chicago inner city suburb. There was a man by the name of Albert Thompson who was a substitute teacher, and he was given a class of fourth graders. And when he got there, being a substitute teacher is never very easy. Anybody relate to that in the room? Sometimes they think they can get away with stuff because the main teacher isn't there. Well, that's what he walked into, is a classroom that was completely out of control. Kids were up, running around, throwing paper. They were running in and out of the doorway, and to get control of the class, he finally said, if you don't sit down, I'm going to send you to the principal's office. And so things seemed to be under control, but one student in that class got very angry, so much so that she made up a story that this teacher had molested her. And besides that, she bribed 10 of her friends with $1 each to share the same story, that they had experienced the same thing. This is a true story. And the teacher was immediately suspended, completely wreaked havoc in his life, and the police investigation uncovered the children's plan, and he was completely exonerated of everything. But when they talked with him afterwards in an interview, he said, "This has been a living hell that I have walked through." And he said, regardless of where I go now in a teaching profession, this story is going to follow me the rest of my life, even though he was completely and totally innocent. The words of our mouth are incredibly significant. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Now today, it's pretty apparent that gossip and talking about other people seems to be the thing of the day. I mean, we have whole TV channels that are dedicated to Hollywood and entertainment gossip. Any Facebook and some of these other social media outlets, gossip runs rampant through all of those areas. Even in some Christian blogs that I've read online, I am absolutely appalled at the way that some of us talk to one another. It absolutely blows my mind. And James seems to agree with me in chapter 3, starting with verse 5. It says, "Likewise, the tongue is a small spark of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, and reptiles and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. And it would seem here that James kind of has an axe to grind, that maybe somebody had said something about him, and so he was really going to try to hammer the point home and make it especially strong. But the fact is that in Jewish culture, the words that come out of your mouth are incredibly important. Jesus taught the same thing in Matthew chapter 15, verse 11. Jesus says, "What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of them, but is what comes out of their mouth that defiles them." For thousands of years, Jewish teachers have focused on the promise from Psalm 34, verses 12 and 13. "Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies." So much so that Peter then quoted that exact same passage of Scripture in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It says, "For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech." One of the words I want us to learn this morning is called Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara actually means evil tongue. Now, what exactly does an evil tongue mean? It would include all kinds of gossip and slander. It would include malicious speech. And Jesus, in his teaching, Luke chapter 6, verse 45, says, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." Lashon Hara. Matter of fact, it's so important in Jewish culture that there is actually a 1-800 hotline that those of the Jewish faith can call that will connect them with a rabbi so that they can ask him if what they want to say is appropriate. No kidding. In Jewish high schools, there are whole school clubs that are made up of students who don't want to give false testimony or talk badly about people, and they hold one another accountable in the way that they talk to each other. So much so that in one high school, they actually had one day that they set out that no gossip would happen for that one day. They find it to be incredibly important. And so another one of those words that I want us to look at is called Shimerat Halashon, which means guarding the tongue. This was of utmost importance in Jesus' day. Some sins are obvious to everyone, such as lying or things like that. But if we probe a little bit deeper, the rabbis found more categories of speech that the Bible warns us about, and some of them, honestly, I never even really looked at as wrong. Now, maybe I knew they were wrong, but they're pretty easy to rationalize. The first one is this. Matzai Shemra is the word for slander. Jesus uses all kinds of different types of speech, but the word here, the Matzai Shemra, actually means to put out a bad name. It means to put out a bad name. And Jesus uses this same phrase when he talks to his disciples about how difficult their mission will be. In Luke chapter 6, verse 22, "Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man." Slander was considered one of the most evil forms of speech in Jewish culture. And just as the little girl discovered in the classroom there, she found out, as Jewish people are aware, that the tongue has incredible power for good or for evil. As a matter of fact, in some of the rabbinic commentaries talking about slander, they link the word for slander to the word for leper. And they actually sound alike, because I know I'm probably not saying them right, but the word, the Matzai Shem Ra, is the word for slander, and the word Metzora is the word for leper. And they connect the two because they're so serious. This is the same word that is used in Numbers when God punishes Miriam for 7 days with leprosy because of the way that she talked about her brothers. And it's incredibly important. We can see all kinds of wrongness with slander, can't we? I mean, it's pretty easy to understand that that's wrong. But Lashon Hara could mean recounting to your coworkers about how the boss messed up his presentation. Or it could be pointing out to your wife how poorly the worship leader sang in church today. It's complaining to your sister that your husband has forgotten your birthday yet again. And any sentence that starts with, "She's a great person, but it's really annoying when..." Those are all examples of Lashon Hara. And sometimes we justify our words because we say, well, I didn't say anything that wasn't true. Well, just because it wasn't true doesn't mean that you should say it. I seem to remember the great theologian Thumper's mother. If you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. If we genuinely care about ourselves, care for others as we care for ourselves, we will try to protect the reputation of others as much as we would want to protect our own. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Imagine what would happen if we cared as much about others' reputations as we did our own. I think it might change some of the ways that we talk. And please understand, I am not pointing fingers this morning because I think in this category, we all are probably getting our toes stepped on. And because I know for me, it steps on mine. But if you remember, Jesus compared lust to adultery and anger to murder. The Jews equated slander or Lashon Hara to incredibly serious crimes. A slanderer, they quoted things like, a slanderer stands in Damascus but kills in Rome. And defamatory statements are like Patriot missiles, computer-guided bombs programmed to annihilate their targets at long distances. You ever thought about that? Over time, as people realize that gossip can't be trusted, the distance between themselves and others grow, and it's actually almost a slow suicide. Well, there's another part of this that is Lashon Hara, and it's called Avak Lashon Hara. And what it means is literally the dust of Lashon Hara. Now, these are things that you would say when someone says something like this. Well, you wouldn't want to know what I think about so-and-so. It says something without saying something, doesn't it? This is where it gets ouch for me. or it could be a raised eyebrow in disdain or a lip curled in disgust. And it communicates your ill opinion of someone else. And they called this the dust of Lashon Hara. Some examples that are given here is, imagine one day you open up the newspaper and there's a letter to the editor from your next door neighbor that you have a terrible relationship with. And you take it over and show it to your wife so that she could be as equally annoyed as you are. Or maybe there's an unflattering picture that someone posts on their website or someone else posts for them, and you share it on your site so that other people can laugh at them. We may never have spoken an untrue word, but the intent and what happens as a result of it behind it is trouble. It would be like this. It would be, they would say, like, if you say something nice about a person that someone dislikes because you know that you're going to get a bad response out of them. A fairly recent example. If you were to mention Rush Limbaugh to an impassioned liberal, or Barack Obama to a right-wing conservative, and trust me, this is where but it's a vak lashon hara. It's casting others in a bad light. In Jewish culture and in Jewish thought, we're responsible for the actions of our community, not just ourselves. They would say we should guard not just our own words, but even the words that we cause others to speak. Another one is called halbanat panim, which literally translated means whitening the face. Whitening the face is that embarrassment or shock from someone as the blood drains away from their face. And I'm not talking about a happy surprise. We're talking about that it's not so good. They actually compare it, the whitening of the face, there's a connection between this and actually the face of a corpse. And it's the word here would be humiliation. And we know intuitively that humiliating someone is wrong. But it's just as equally wrong to do it to their face as it is to do it away from them. They're so sensitive about humiliation and making others look badly that Orthodox Jews are all, when they die, they're all buried in pine boxes and wear a white garment underneath because they don't want the poor to look bad because other people can afford a more fancy, elaborate casket. There's something amazing that happens, and this particularly, and I don't talk about social issues very often, and I don't even know if this is necessarily a social issue, but it's one that I've seen as a youth pastor and as a dad, is how humiliating things can be online. There's a story of this young lady who's going to be on the screen. Her name is Alexis Plinkington. Alexis was a lovely, talented 17-year-old girl, a well-liked athlete who had already landed a soccer scholarship to college. but in the wee hours of Sunday, March 21st, 2010, she made one last comment on her Facebook page, "So done with everything," and then she committed suicide. What had driven her to take her life? She was successful, she was well-liked. She had been suffering from depression, but her friends are convinced that what pushed her over the brink were vicious, lewd comments posted about her online by anonymous classmates. Their cruelty didn't even stop after she had died. Someone put on her Facebook page, she was obviously a stupid, depressed blank who deserved to kill herself. She got what she wanted. Be happy for her death. Rejoice in it. The words of our mouths have incredible power. That lovely young lady is no longer on the earth because of humiliation. Be careful. Those of us in a Facebook generation that know what that is, be careful. And I'm sure there's probably every one of the young people that has a Facebook page, and I know it because I'm friends with pretty much most of you. You know what happens. And you know how quickly things can spread. There's another one that they talk about, and this one is Genevat Da'at, which is a literal translation is stealing knowledge. It's stealing knowledge. It would be like, probably happens to us maybe just last weekend, when stores lower their prices, but they're still making an incredible profit, but you think you're getting a great deal? It's like that. But the thing is we look at, we would say that stealing is wrong. But to steal someone's knowledge is something pretty serious. Some practical examples of it. It would be spending a half hour grilling a computer salesman at the store about the different computers that are there, all along knowing that you're going to go and buy it online. Ouch! Because I've done that exact same thing. It'd be to invite someone to a party when you know that person can't attend, or to offer something to a friend knowing that the other person won't accept. You may never actually utter a false word, but all of these things steal others' goodwill, understanding that they can deliberately create a false impression of yourself. It can make you look generous, but you really asked them out of obligation, and you were hoping they'd say no. Been there, done that, and probably all of us have done that. There's a reason that the tongue is so incredibly important. Have you guys ever seen the workout now called Pilates? Anybody in here done Pilates? Let me see. Anybody done Pilates? Pilates is an exercise program that started. You'll be in pain. But Pilates works the core of your body. The idea of that is that if your core is healthy, that the rest of you will probably be in pretty good shape. Probably, not necessarily always. But the idea of Pilates is to work the core of your body. And they say that if you do Pilates, you'll stand straighter, you'll breathe deeper, and you'll enjoy a better quality of life if your core is better. And James tells us something that I think is incredibly important, that he says in James 3:2, we all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. I think the core for us is right here. Scripture says, can good words and bad words come out of the same mouth? Can dirty water come out of a spring that was releasing clean water? Dirty water, I said that wrong. You know what I mean. But out of the same thing, both things can't flow. And so for myself, I want to cherish the names of other people as much as I would hope that they would cherish mine. Because if we're missing it in this point, folks, we're not healthy. And I think all of us would agree. I know for me, I've got some things to work on. Since I've read this book, I've been catching myself a lot. And not in, lying, and not in, going on TV and say somebody's bad. But I've caught myself, particularly in that avak lashon hara, in the dust of lashon hara, the dust of an evil tongue. Just like that video showed, and the blonde gal said, we should be lifting our brothers and sisters up in Christ. We shouldn't be tearing them down. It's something that we really need to be careful with. James also says that the mouth is like the rudder of a ship. Remember that? It's a tiny little part, but it tells the ship where to go. And folks, our mouths are the same thing. We can use it for the purposes that it's intended, and that's to encourage, to love, to motivate, to challenge. Instead of what is so easy for us to slip into. And it is really easy for us as Christians at times to rationalize what's wrong. I know. I've been there. Well, I didn't technically say anything that was wrong. I didn't technically say anything that wasn't true. Well, technically, it's a sin. Ouch. That hurts. But folks, we need our core to be solid. We need our core to be healthy. This is such a great time of year, this Christmas, and I guarantee you, you're going to be with family, right? There's going to be some times that, and I'm just praying that maybe this message will pop into your mind when you're sitting around with your family talking, or when you're maybe talking about a family member who's not there. Our mouths are so important. And when we have surrendered our entire life to Christ, I think there's two things that are the hardest to control, that we have the hardest time giving up control of. Two things: money and our mouth. My feet can get me into the places that I'm supposed to be at. M&M's, money, and our mouth. If we can get those surrendered to Christ, we'll be a long way down the road. James actually said that if a man can control his tongue, he's perfect. I got a ways to go in that. Anybody relate to that? I know I can do better in this. I think what I want us to do for prayer time, because honestly, the fact is, if we opened up the altar and if we were all really serious about it, these seats would be empty. You know what I'm saying? Because this is something, and trust me, this hits me as much as it hits you. What I think I'd like us to do is to get into just some groups of people around where you're at, with people that you're comfortable with, and let's take 5 minutes and pray about this area in your life. Can we do that? I know it's different. You guys should know me enough by now. I do that a lot. Different. But let's take just 5 minutes and pray with one another about our mouths. Okay? So, do it. Go.